Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the One to Know podcast. I'm Joel Haas.
I'm Lexi Linderman.
And I'm Avery Hill.
Today, we'll preview Penn State's upcoming matchup against Purdue. We'll also share our thoughts on the AP poll, the college football playoff rankings, all that good stuff, and kind of some broader thoughts on the program as it stands right now. But to start, guys, Penn State looks to extend its winning streak with a trip to West Lafayette. How do you see the Nittany Lions faring in their trip to Purdue?
First glance, Purdue is just objectively bad, and I think that outside of Kent State, this is probably the worst team they'll see this season. They haven't won a Big Ten game. They've lost 7 straight games. Their only win is over Indiana State, which they blew them out. So good for them. But other than that, they're just not good. They did put up 49 points against Illinois, but that was without Hudson Card, which okay. and then Ohio State, they just got walloped last week, 45-0. So, you expect Penn State to be on the same level as Ohio State. You expect kind of that same score. There isn't much, I think, that Purdue can do in this matchup to kind of, stop Penn State. I also think just based on how Penn State looked last week, I think that was one of the best performances they've had this season. In that win over Washington, I think the offense looked great, and I think that if they keep that going, Purdue genuinely stands no chance. Purdue's kind of pulled off some upsets in the past, things like that, but I don't think this is a year that they're going to be doing that. I honestly just think this is just a bad football team, and, there aren't many bright spots for them at all, so, yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of bright spots. We're not going to have to worry about the spoiler makers not happening. They will not be making any spoils come Saturday. I will guarantee that. If not, I will shave my head. I'm saying it right here. Purdue is not.
We gotta clip that.
Wait, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Purdue is not a good team.
Well, yeah.
They're bad. Even the Indiana State win, it was the first week of the season. They have not won since August. We've gone through 2 seasons, hurricanes, an election, and they have yet to win another football game. If you look at their film, they're running into each other on the play, missed assignments, which everyone has missed assignments, but running into each other, that's okay. And then sometimes it's just effort. It looks like they're checked out. And I expect to see that Saturday. It being home makes no difference for Purdue. I'm not sure how the atmosphere will be with how bad they are. Obviously, usually it's kind of ruckus, and that's probably an understatement in some ways. But in other ways, I don't think that they're really drawing too much attention. You look at the other games, they've lost or they've given up, 50 points or 40 points 4 times this season. 3 of them, I think, one was a near shutout, 66-7. I'm sorry, you got 1 touchdown. Then the other ones was the 35-zip to Oregon, the Ohio State blowout. It's just they're getting mollywopped week after week. I don't expect that to change on Saturday, so that's what I think, honestly.
Yeah, and you mentioned the crowd. Tickets are going for $6, to go to this game,
That
which
is a little overpriced.
Regardless, that's you could get a full, you could get 2, you could get a Starbucks drink for that price.
Well, what can you get at Beaver Stadium for that? That's the real question.
Half a chicken basket?
Yeah. Maybe a pizza?
One
pizza
pint of ice
That might be better. Maybe
pizza.
2 chicken tenders might be better than
Yeah,
a trip
maybe
to this
a
game.
pizza.
Yeah.
You can't even get a peachy paterno or any of that. No ice cream.
No.
Yeah.
You can't get that.
No,
so.
you can't get it. But yeah, so tickets are insanely cheap for this game. I don't think the crowd's going to be anything to worry about.
Yeah.
This team just isn't anything to worry about in general. Like you mentioned, they lost 66-7 to Notre Dame. Lost to Illinois 50-49. Still letting Illinois score 50 points. That is when everyone thought they were kind of good. But regardless, it's still. And then,
Wait, thought Purdue was good?
Illinois.
Oh.
Yeah, no one ever thought Purdue
I
was
thought you were gonna
Whatever,
say-
Maybe after Indiana State.
Maybe after Indiana
State
State.
thought Purdue was good.
Yeah, Indiana State.
With Raider legend Aiden O'Connell, they did.
Well, yeah. AOC is the
I don't know
goat.
how he got drafted, but anyways.
All right. But there are the problem with Purdue is that they have some people that are supposed to be good. They have corners that are supposed to be good. Dylan. I don't know how to say his last name. It's Theinman. That's how you say it. Theinman. He just.
Thinman? I don't know.
Bulletin board, Joel. Bulletin board.
Yeah, I gotta be careful.
I'm gonna be shaving my head. You better watch out.
Purdue, please. Please.
But he went on a tear last year as a true freshman. Racked up so many awards. He was the first defender in Big Ten history to have 5 weekly award wins in one season. And he kind of comes out this year not playing his best football. He moves to a more inside the box role, and it's kind of benefited him. But I mean, I saw something against Notre Dame. He was the lowest graded defender on Purdue by PFF, and that's just like, you know, not what he was producing last year. And I just think, you know, in general, the whole defense just looks bad. And, you know, even on offense.
Yeah, the whole team.
The whole
team
looks bad.
coaching.
But I will say, they do have a good tight end, Max Clare. Third most receiving yards in the Big Ten by a tight end, behind just obviously Tyler Warren and Michigan's tight end Loveland. So I think he is a good talent, for sure. I think, you know, if there's anyone to watch on Purdue, you know, it's him. He's only a redshirt sophomore, and he looks great. He was actually supposed to be a multi-sport athlete. He was supposed to play baseball at Purdue too, but he had an ankle injury last year, so he didn't do it.
Should have stuck with baseball.
But yeah, I mean, like, so I think if you look to the offensive side of the ball, he's kind of the one bright spot there. I mean, Hudson Card is like, you know, average, not a horrible quarterback, not a good quarterback. I mean, they scored 49 points without him, though. So, like, is he really... Anyway.
Yeah, no, but I think Purdue does actually have some... I mean, any Big Ten team, you know, regardless of how bad they are going to have some guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right, and like you mentioned, Lexi, like Thidman at corner. And then they also brought in Nyland Green, the corner who transferred from Georgia after 3 years at Georgia. And, you know, he didn't play much with the Bulldogs, which obviously is probably why he transferred. But at the end of the day, you know, anyone who was recruited by Georgia, spent time playing for them, did see the field at times. To varying amounts, and you know, that team won 2 national championships while he was there. He was around that culture, and so I thought, you know, with that kind of duo of cornerbacks, that maybe Purdue would have a pretty good secondary, and here they are, third worst in the Big Ten in passing yards allowed. They're also worst in the Big Ten in rushing yards allowed, and so, you know, if you're Penn State, you're obviously looking at that, and you're kind of licking your chops, and you know, looking at the potential for what you can do on offense, and you know, this almost reminds me of when the SEC teams in November will play some random, you know, FCS school that no one's ever heard of. This is almost like Penn State's, you know, tune-up game, kind of heading into the final stretch of the season here, and you know, it's kind of a get-right game. It's kind of that last opportunity, maybe get some freshmen and some depth pieces, some more time, things like that. Franklin talked about that at length this week, about, you know, getting the freshmen involved and kind of managing the redshirt status with some of those guys who have only played 1, 2, 3 games, however many, that, you know, they might get an opportunity to get into this game. But I think the consensus all around from all of us is just that, you know, this should be a blowout in favor of Penn State, and if it's not, I mean, Avery will say goodbye to his hair, But I guess we'll go ahead and give our score predictions for this one, because I think it's pretty obvious kind of where we're headed. But I'll start. I had Penn State winning this one 42-10, and I want to say that the 10 comes in garbage time with backups in the game.
Yeah, I have Penn State winning 67-0, and I'm so serious. Like, I might think this is a joke. This is not a joke. I'm serious. I mean, again, I watched their film. They are not good. They're a bad team. And then once you think about it, they're at the tail end of the season. They're checked out. I mean, I think a lot of this is coaching, because it's a culture thing when you have guys that are playing with no effort and things like that. Like, especially you talk about, you have Georgia transfers and guys coming from all through the country. Like, it's a coaching thing. I think that'll show. I think that Penn State, and, you know, James Franklin, he'll run the score up in a minute. So I think he'll continue running the score up even with the backups in. And so I think it gets to 67-0. I think it'll probably be like 30-something zip at halftime, especially if Penn State comes out as it did against Washington in the whiteout.
Yeah, I have Penn State 48-3. I was just a little hesitant to have them score more than Ohio State, but I think that the offense looks good, and I think that, you know, like Joel said, I think any points Purdue gets is probably going to come in garbage time with the backups in. I mean, maybe this is the game we finally see Ethan Grunkenmeyer, you know, play quarterback for Penn State. I think fans are probably excited. Maybe Corey Smith gets some more game action. I mean, he ripped off that 78-yard run against Washington last week. I think fans are just excited to see the freshman. I think Tysier Denmark will hopefully get some playing time so fans can get a better look at him and things like that. So, yeah, I don't think Purdue really stands much of a chance this one, but, you know, we also said the same thing about Bowling Green, so, you know, it's
Whoa. We got to draw a line.
I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Harold Fannin Jr., some people's Mackey Award winner. I said some people, I didn't say me. Just saying. Just want to throw that there.
No, Purdue doesn't stand a chance.
But, yeah, I mean, I think, like, looking at, like, the young guys, I think they'll have a chance to, like, really make plays. As I said, Franklin will run the score. If you saw it with Corey Smith, he probably should have scored. He probably got winded. Of course, that's a long run. That's 78 yards. Like, I'm passing out by the time I get to the 50-yard line. And that's after I just stumbled across like 20 yards. Like I'm really like about to pass out at 30 yards, but I'm still trying to make it, and I'm hitting flat at the 50. So like I understand that. That's a long run. I'm sure he talked about it. He's probably like, yeah, I'm not gonna get caught again. That's not gonna happen again. I think he said something about that in practice, something like that. He's like, you gonna let that happen again? I think one of the coaches said, he said, never again, So I think that it'll be a game for him to show what he can do. I think because I know Franklin said like the guys that have already played a game, it's most likely that they'll play probably this game. Would seem like what he was alluding to. So him, Tyseer Denmark. I mean, he's of course everybody's talked about him and how he's come on so strong and things like that. I mean, I think that it'll be a game that everyone eats. I mean, it's a game that the receivers can show off. I mean, if I'm Penn State first play, I'm throwing a deep ball to Amari Evans. Like, it better be open. Like, that's just, and if it's not open, I'm doing it again. If it's not open, I'm doing it one more time just to see if I was tripping. I'm just saying. Like, I'm going to see, like, I'm going to test some things in this game. Obviously, you're not going to get too cute, and, of course, you have to still respect your opponent. But, like, for being serious, they shouldn't have any problem getting things to work, getting separation, things like that. So,
well, it's interesting you guys mentioned Corey Smith just because of Nick Singleton's status right now. Obviously, he left the game early last Saturday, and James Franklin said it would be a short-term injury, and then we got to see him during the practice window, and I thought he was fine. He was moving well through all the drills and things like that. He didn't have any sort of brace or anything on him, so I think he'll be a full go, but regardless, even if you want to kind of play it safe as a staff, Corey Smith has kind of already proven that, he can be that guy that, maybe not, obviously not as good as Singleton, but against a team like Purdue, it probably doesn't make a big difference to have, maybe Katron and Corey instead of Katron and Nick. So that'll be kind of something interesting to monitor, how much Singleton plays, how he looks, but also if Corey Smith gets some burn in that game. But we can kind of pivot now to kind of one of the bigger topics of the week. A lot of discussion around the college football playoff rankings. Obviously, this was the first year where, the playoff has expanded to 12 teams, and it gives Penn State, the best shot it's ever had to make the playoffs. And Penn State right now is looking at potentially hosting a home playoff game. That's kind of where they slot in just about every projection. As long as they kind of take care of business down the stretch through these last 3 games, they should be in that 5 to 8 range. They came in at number 4 in the college football playoff rankings this week, which was up 2 spots from the initial ranking. But because of, the conference auto bids, they would get jumped by, I think it's Miami out of the ACC and then BYU out of the Big 12 who would jump Penn State, assuming those 2 win their conferences. And then Penn State would end up getting the 6th seed and host Ole Miss in a rematch of the Peach Bowl. That one would be at Beaver Stadium, which, is a little bit more interesting than playing at a neutral site. And, neutral site because it was in Atlanta and it was drivable for Ole Miss and not drivable for Penn State fans, which not quite a neutral site in my mind. But
I need to get in my geography.
I mean, I think it was like 14 hours?
I'm gonna go talk to Rucci. I need to get down my geography because I'm new to me.
I think, if I'm remembering right, I think it was like 5.5 hour drive from Ole Miss to Atlanta, and it's like 14 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Alabama's like right there, so I know a lot of people go. So I guess that makes sense. It's not too far from Alabama. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought the Penn State fans had a good showing for that game. I think it was maybe 60-40 Ole Miss. Like, they might have had a slight edge just because, it was one of the first New Year's Six games for them ever. They've only played in a few New Year's Six games. It ended up being, I think, their first New Year's Six win ever. And so, obviously their fans were excited about that. And Penn State fans, under James Franklin, you've been to whatever 6 New Year's Six games. And so at that point, it's a little bit watered down, and I don't think it necessarily means as much. And then obviously there was the whole situation with the opt-outs, which most of them weren't really known until fans probably got there and checked in at their hotel, and then they find out half the team didn't even travel or wasn't going to play or was only going to play the first drive or whatever. But getting back to playoff rankings, obviously they came out, Penn State, like we said, sitting at number 4, which would put them at number 6. They were behind Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, right above Indiana, right above BYU, Tennessee, Notre Dame. There's a bunch of SEC schools also in the mix. A lot of those 1-2 loss teams: Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Texas A&M, South Carolina even is kind of bordering in the mix there. And so a lot of SEC teams still think that they have kind of a shot to make the playoffs. And obviously we're covering Penn State, and so when the rankings come out, we're tweeting about it and we're covering potential matchups and things like that. And I had a lot of SEC fans in my mentions this week replying to my tweets. Had to mute some notifications. but I was trying to respond if anyone wanted to have a discussion with me. I was open to obviously hearing other perspectives and points of view and trying
Bring
to
them on the pod.
trying to figure it out. I'd be happy to have them come on the pod and talk about their stance. I saw a few people saying Vanderbilt would beat Penn State by a couple touchdowns by multiple scores, and it wasn't just one or two like troll accounts. It was like a good amount of SEC fans, and so I think it's hard because I do think probably you could make the argument that the three best teams in college football are all in the Big Ten. But I think at the same time, you could also say the SEC is the best all-around conference and has the best depth this year. And it's interesting because, Alabama loses to Vanderbilt. And instead of admitting that, hey, maybe Alabama's not that great this year, the SEC fans are now saying, well, Vanderbilt's an elite program. Like, Vanderbilt should be in the playoff race as well. And it's like, they lost to Georgia State. Like, let's pump the brakes.
Okay, well, let's respect
Just
Diego
saying,
Pavia,
let's respect Vanderbilt.
Yes.
It's a hard game
I won't
to
stand,
win.
I won't stand for the
saying.
Vanderbilt slander, but I do. I mean, I don't think they're like a playoff contender, and I also think the argument, like, you can't compare like apples to oranges. You can't say Vanderbilt's gonna beat Penn State by 2 touchdowns because they're never gonna play. And Joe, like you said, like Vanderbilt lost to Georgia State, and then I've been seeing a lot of like Texas being over Penn State. I mean, you can even make the argument Penn State should be over Texas. Like Texas's best win is Vanderbilt, and
and that's by 3 points.
Exactly, and then you kind of.
Proves
And I think
Vanderbilt's
didn't
point.
Vanderbilt miss a short field goal at the end of that game? I feel
It was
happened.
there was something like that.
Yeah.
Like Vanderbilt could have won that game.
They definitely
too.
would have won that game.
Yeah, and then it's like Texas got blown out by Georgia, who now has 2 losses, and I think the committee has shown in the past that they're always gonna look at bad losses as bad losses, and they're gonna look at good wins as good wins. But if you have 2 losses, they're not putting you in over a team that only has 1 that is proven to be a good program. And we saw it in 2016. Penn State beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten. They had 2 bad losses. They didn't make it in. Ohio State makes it in. Washington makes it in. So I think fans need to remember that before they get all angry about the rankings too. Because I mean, I've even seen people saying Indiana shouldn't be number 5. I'm like, sure, they haven't proven anything, but until they lose, the committee doesn't really have a choice than to put them in the top 12.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's also kind of in general, the SEC is really matchup based. Like this year, of course, it's as stacked as it's ever been. Like, you have ranked opponents every single week. Like, I know I saw something on Twitter about how the tiebreaker is going to be, crazy because you could have 3 teams that are undefeated in the conference at the end of the season because they don't play each other. Like, they're going to have to go back to divisions, first of all. I think the whole country should go back to the divisions. I think it's kind of crazy. Why are we, just all, it doesn't make sense. It's never going to work out. But, anyways, I just think that, it's really matchup-based in the SEC, which kind of changes perspective because it's Texas got blown out by Georgia because Georgia matches up with them, pretty well in Georgia's favor. Georgia is a much, less favorable matchup for Texas than, a Vanderbilt and stuff like that. It's really different. And Georgia's always going to get their respect because they're Georgia. And that's also something with the committee. I mean, you saw, I know a lot of the times, okay, you're a 1-loss team versus a 2-loss team with, bad loss, you're not going to get in. But was it last year with Alabama losing?
Florida State,
yeah, losing
Florida State,
2 games. Yeah, Florida State. But even with Alabama losing, I think losing to Texas, lost another game, but they snuck in because it's Alabama. There's a lot of bias in the playoff committee, and it's never a perfect way to do it. But I do think that I think right now I'm still Oregon's the best team. Ohio State, I don't know if they're second best really. I don't know. I feel like they're good, but I feel great. But I feel like they just don't show up like they need to. We'll see what they do in the playoffs.
I think Ohio State's the best team in the country. I don't know
think so.
if that's
Oregon lost a receiver and won the game.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think
It's their starts.
I think you can
their starts. That's my thing. It's just their starts. I think they could get down big to anybody in the country and it'll kind of be over, actual teams. Because they haven't really, they have Penn State and then what was the rest? We'll see Indiana, really.
Ohio State also had a
that'll be
really
a matchup.
tough schedule because,
yes.
Oregon, Indiana, and Penn State don't play each other at all. And Ohio State played all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And
So
2 of them are on the road.
They can't help themselves.
Yeah.
Win these games or else.
I do think Ohio State could beat Oregon. I think they obviously showed that in that
for
1
sure.
point loss.
Yeah, I'm not
And I mean,
saying
we'll see. Barring Ohio State beats Indiana, Big Ten championship rematch. We'll really whoever wins that game is going to be the number 1 team in the country. So that'll just be interesting to see. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think the problem is like it's hard to like look at Will Howard and then look at Dylan Gabriel and be like, who do you trust
That's
to
my
like
issue.
lead
I'll be
lead the
honest,
number
that's my
one team
issue.
in the country?
Well, yeah, there aren't. I feel like there aren't a lot of like elite quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking. Yeah, there's not like I feel like, and even the ones that are elite, they have ones that are like, are you elite? Like, I mean, Jalen Milroe, he's elite, but then he had some games where it's like, where was this? Like, he looks like a freshman Jalen Milroe that took off every play, and but I mean, he did it against LSU and it worked. So it's like, it's very confusing. That's why I think college football now. I hope, because I feel like I thought that last year as well, and then we watched Georgia, pummel everybody. Like, I hope that it's more competitive this year, especially in the playoff space. I feel like, again, everyone is playing competition every week. Iron sharpens iron. I think that we should be seeing each team's best, like the best of the best, by the time the playoffs come. I think regardless, I think there'll be some surprises that come out in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it might be Oregon losing in the first round. Like, it'll be something crazy. I mean, honestly, the hope is for me that Boise State just takes off Ashton Genty.
That'd be if Boise
200
State
yards.
Wins the game, because everyone's just saying like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like they'll get the 12th seed as the like group of 5 representative.
Yeah.
But if they actually like win a game,
Yeah.
that would be crazy for like what it would
I mean,
be.
they almost beat Oregon, so it's not
Right,
unrealistic.
yeah, it was a 3-point
No.
loss.
They
to
almost beat
Oregon. Yeah, that's
Oregon,
their only
like
loss.
so everyone's going to bring their best to the playoffs. And I mean, if you look at Penn State, like Abdul Carter, he's hot. Like back games with 2 sacks. Like I literally locked in on Abdul Carter the whole game, and he is like, bang, 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 every play. Like he's blasting off the ball. Like Lexi, you remember on that second sack? I said
Yeah.
Abdul. Like
Yeah.
I'm watching him the whole play. He's explodes off the line, sack. Like
Well, before they even snapped the ball, you're like Abdul's sacking, like Abdul's getting a sack here. And
Yeah.
He did. I mean,
yeah,
like,
like,
he's just,
I saw him like the way he lined up. I could tell he was ready. Which, if I'm other teams, I'm calling some delayed snap counts and everything. Like I'm getting the jump off sides because you could tell like he was ready to go. Sometimes you'll see his foot like he's dominant right now. So I think if he's on in the playoffs, it is scary hours. Watch out. Like,
Well, yeah, if the refs actually decide to call holding on the left
Right,
tackle,
exactly.
they'll get a sack on every,
Yeah,
on every
exactly.
play.
yeah,
Exactly.
they're holding him every play. Like
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
he is held
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
play. I also think it's interesting though, like mentioned like Abdul Carter being on, but also I think it's Penn State's in line to host a game, and I think they're in line to host one of those like tier 2 SEC schools, and you kind of think about when this game is being taken place, December. In State College, Pennsylvania. I hate December in State College, Pennsylvania. It's
Yeah.
too cold. It's just like, it's not even like cold, it's just like bitter cold. Like it's like the
It's too
air
cold
is
right
Oh, I
now.
get a
different.
brain freeze walking outside.
Oh my god,
It's
yeah.
too
Like
cold right now. Forget
exactly.
that.
Like
I
the
don't even-
air.
I walked outside. I said, "Can I go back inside? I don't want to
Yeah,
do this."
can we go to Miami or something?
Yeah.
Can we lose?
I said this in
Maybe-
the beginning of the season. Nobody was with me. I said UNLV, Miami. Y'all got to be top seeds. Like I've been saying it. Like
but yeah, the air is different, and all these SEC schools, are not used to that. So I think that's an interesting aspect, because you also have obviously the crowd is going to be crazy no matter what. But then you add that weather on top of it. I mean, the Penn State guys are used to playing in this weather. These Southern schools are just not used to playing in that weather. So I mean that could be a factor too. I mean things line up well for Penn State,
Yeah.
but it seems like they always do, and then it's a matter of if like they actually get over that line.
Well, another thing that benefits Penn State is like cold weather. That's when you want to run the ball. That's when
Yeah.
you want to play good defense.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
benefits the defense, and that's what Penn State has been known for basically its entire program history. It's always been like a defense first team, and that's really the Big Ten as a whole. And I think that benefits all of them if you're playing these games, in Beaver Stadium or Ohio Stadium or whatever, wherever it may be. And all these Big Ten teams kind of have that advantage there that maybe wasn't there in the past when you're playing a New Year's Six game in Texas, Florida, Louisiana, wherever. And yeah, I think that does benefit them. But I'm just very curious because it seems like the last few years and this year as well, Penn State is either losing to Ohio State or Michigan, which is like a top 5 team, or beating an unranked team. And realistically, if you're like trying to place Penn State, it's like, well, they could be number 6. Like they could be right outside the top 5. They could also be like the 20th best team in the country, and they just don't play any other kind of teams in that range. And so it's really hard to like get a measure. But obviously, like a playoff game would serve as like a good benchmark for that. But I mean, strength of schedule obviously is a big topic for Penn State, and it's why a lot of people think Penn State should be lower than it is right now. I think you can make that argument for a lot of teams. We talked about a little bit like Texas and like I don't know, and also like one of the other things just with strength of schedule that I wanted to touch on is like the SEC plays less conference games than they play 8 conference games. The Big Ten plays 10, and so like Alabama's playing Mercer on Saturday. Like, that's not a school.
That's school.
You gotta
That's
get
the
your-
name
but
of
you got to get your cupcake weekend. They got, if you look at before the season, looking at the schedule, they got Oklahoma after that. Like, Auburn's never easy. Like, I'm not trying to stick up for
Okay, but
Alabama,
like-
yes I am, but like still,
Mercer's the name of my friend from high school. Like, that is not a real university.
Kent
And
State will lose to Mercer.
I know Penn State's playing Purdue, which like.
Yeah, but that's also that's
not
still a
big
Big
game
Ten
either, but
team.
but, like,
you know
But
what I
Kent
mean?
State would
play a
lose to
conference
Mercer. Like,
Yeah, I
and
mean-
even I mean that's you. If you the SEC, I feel like right now because again, like as you said, the Big Ten top heavy. The SEC is just loaded all around.
Right.
You can make the argument whether or not who has the better, top competitors. But when you look at some of the SEC schedules, you're playing again heavy hitters week after week. Like I'm not scheduling a good team if I don't have. I mean, if I have the choice, that's just setting my team up for
The SEC does not have Purdue. To your point.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I also think though, like the Big Ten, like sure, like these teams like look bad when they play like Ohio State, Oregon, even Indiana. But I also think like Indiana only beat Washington 31-17, and like Penn State beat them 35-6, and it's like I think Indiana is a good football team, and I obviously we'll find out on Saturday like if they're actually like the real deal. But some of these wins just like. They're impressive, but like they're like the most impressive to me is their 56-7 win over Nebraska, which went toe to toe with Ohio State. But Nebraska, because Nebraska's not like horrible.
they're
I mean,
so-so.
they're like it's like, but it's like the Big Ten's just like full of these like so teams, and it's just like hard. I mean, it's like hard to be. I don't know.
It's just teams
weird.
that are on the rise, but teams that aren't
Exactly,
ready. That's
yeah.
what even Indiana you could argue is a team on the rise, and I mean we'll see again, but
Yeah.
they could very much be once they get through these last 2-3 weeks. That is like okay, they're on the rise, but they're not ready.
Yeah.
Like that's just what it is. I mean, I think a couple teams surprised people. Of course, Indiana surprised people. I think Nebraska didn't surprise me, but some people would say, okay, I expected them to be a little worse than that. Like, I mean, I think looking at Raiola and stuff like that, like
Right.
he's a really good quarterback, but you could say, okay, they're not ready. I mean, and there's also the teams like Rutgers is a competitive team. I mean, I thought they would do better this year, but I do think the future is. Okay, I'm not going to say bright. The future is a little less dim for Rutgers.
The sun is like rising.
Yeah, the sun is rising for Rutgers in future season. I think they can get up to being a ranked team. I don't think they can get up to being a playoff team. So I do think like that is the one difference when you look at SEC versus them. I think SEC has a lot of teams that are ready. Like you look at Ole Miss, you look at Tennessee, even like South Carolina. Like they're they just got ranked. Like they're ready not for playoff ball, but they are ready to just hang in that ranked space. I think that's the only difference, and that comes from development plus recruiting, like stuff like that. It's just it's just different modes of how they kind of go about things in the South. That's all.
Well, yeah, and Indiana also like almost lost to Michigan, which like Michigan's not a good team this year. I think everyone just kind of gave them that like national championship respect, and then they've just proven they're just not good.
Yeah.
But still, like Indiana, like Michigan could have won that game too. I mean, like they had the ball at the end of the fourth quarter and just couldn't convert. There, so I just think it's just like the Big Ten's just weird because it's a bunch of so teams that it's like any given week. Like even UCLA has like put together like a semblance of a season after we thought they were like garbage, and they just beat Iowa, held Caleb Johnson to like under 50 yards rushing. So it's just a weird dynamic this year, and the SEC like it's just a very different dynamic. So I think it's like just hard to keep to compare the Big Ten teams to the SEC teams because it's just completely different.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also scheduling too, though. Like looking at again, like how SEC might have a tiebreaker because they don't have teams playing each other at the same time. They have teams, playing ranked opponents every week. Like the Big Ten, you have your heavy hitters, but it feels spread out. Like you looked at Rutgers has probably the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. I cannot remember what their record is right now, which is why I said they should be doing better. But like you'll have those teams that have like really easy schedules, and then you have those teams that's like you have maybe one or two heavy hitters, and then you're like coasting for the rest. Like Penn State, like again, they're you could argue
Penn State's
USC
like
was
the one team
heavy hitter
in that middle.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
it's the locks. It's also with the the game locks and stuff like that. And I'm sure it has something to do with the numbers thing and all that and logistics. But I feel like if the schedules were more stacked, like let's say for Penn State's sake, they play Michigan, they play Indiana, they play Ohio State. Hey, maybe they even play Oregon or something like that. Like obviously that would change how you look at Penn State, and that goes the same for the rest of the thing. So I mean, yeah, I just think that's what it is. And even just looking at the West teams, like there's only one good team that came in, unless I'm blanking on somebody. But like Washington, we knew they were losing the whole team. UCLA is in a rebuild. Deshaun Foster. LA coach, you know.
UCLA's in LA.
Yeah. Did you know that?
I just found out. I found out back in the
Yeah, so it's just there in the weird place. I think 2 or 3 years in the future, we'll probably see a different product from the Big Ten. I wouldn't say better because that's, kind of diminishing what they're doing now, but I think it'll look definitely a lot different. I think teams will definitely grow for sure.
Well, regardless of how you feel between the Big Ten and SEC, we'll probably get a pretty good matchup between Penn State and an SEC school. It looks like kind of that's what we're locked in for at this point. There are a bunch of SEC teams kind of in that 9 to 12 range, kind of vying for a trip to Beaver Stadium in December, which I'm sure they're all very excited about the opportunity of having. And Penn State, obviously, as long as they can take care of business and not mess around too much these next 3 weeks and make Avery get a haircut.
Oh, I'd be mad if I was a walk-on. I'm thinking I'm about to get a trip to California, all of that. They're like, oh, I'm sending you to Happy Valley. And then what if they lose? And you just go back and you're like, you didn't get no trip. Because I'm like,
you gotta bust to Harrisburg first.
If I was them, I would be pushing for another bowl game if you lose. The first game, I would be pushing for it. They're not going to do it, but it'd be fun because I'm like, as a player, especially if I don't get in, I'm here for the trips. I'm here for the experience. Like, come on now.
No ball, just vibes.
Exactly. Oranges at halftime. That's what I'm here for.
That's it for today's episode. We got an extra long one with a lot of ball knowledge being spilled today. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, as always, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to help us out. We'll see you guys next week with another episode, and we'll be covering the game. We'll be making the trip to Purdue together, so you can find our content at psucollegian.com and follow us on socials.
Pictures of my Waffle House on Twitter.
Oh my God.